Hello, this is Maplemation's animation team, and we're creating a series of tutorials to teach people how to sprite animate. Last chapter, we covered how to animate. This chapter, we're going to cover how to animate well. To do so, we're focusing on the fundamentals and how to apply the 12 principles of animation. We highly recommend watching Becker's tutorial, which will be linked below, and gain an understanding of it because that video will explain it better than any of us would. Without further ado, let's begin. Fluidity is the concept of things flowing into one another freely without stopping. When it comes to sprite animation, a key trait of older animations from the dinosaur times of animation was a lack of fluidity. Characters and objects would jerk and jump around a lot. They'd move choppily and things were generally kooky and weird. Now that we're here in the future as of this moment, we've discovered some neat tips and tricks for making animations that look fluid. Let's say you're trying to animate someone swinging a sword vertically. Something easy. There are two typical ways people go about doing something like this. Animating straight ahead, or doing blocking passes. Animating straight ahead is just animating every single pose and frame as you go along. This lets you just kind of play around and experiment, and just lets you fly by the seat of your pants. It's a very hard commitment to whatever idea you may have. If you're confident in whatever you're doing, or just doing something easy, you can try this approach. This technique falls apart if you get stuck at some point and run out of ideas or decide that you don't like what you've done and want to change something. Because you animated everything fully, it's a lot more work to go back and redo things. Blocking passes are just putting down specific keyframes and poses that will appear in the animation, and filling in the blanks before and after those poses. This is essentially planning what will happen in the animation before you do it, so you always have an idea of where to go. While you're filling in the blanks, take that time to see if you like where the animation is going. If you don't like it, you can just go back and delete the stuff because you didn't fully commit. The hardest thing about this technique is getting started and committing to something. You could sit there for hours just deciding what to do and what poses to put where. We described two possible approaches in their purest forms. But for most people, these approaches aren't mutually exclusive. For some things, you might be able to animate straight ahead, and for some others, you might block it out to test the waters before you fully commit. You don't have to put yourself into a category. Use the tools available to you. In other words, use both depending on which seems more convenient at that moment. Pay attention to framing and body positioning for every single frame. Framing is how many frames you decide to have something last and how much movement occurs from frame to frame. Bad framing techniques include having too much or too little movement from frame to frame and uneven amounts of frames in an animation. Pay very close attention to what goes into every frame and how many frames you decide to use for an action. If you remember back in chapter 1, we brought up ones, twos, stuff like that. Mix them in there to get your desired result. Body positioning is what a character or object looks like at any given moment. Another principle you will often apply is exaggeration to really sell the movement and weight of your attacks. More on that in the next part.